أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك سوط عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد.
دعائكم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وضل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له شيء. يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تصامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم أعظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلم قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي، ظلمت نفسي، ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت على قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فاضح من البلايا قلت وكم من عثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرت بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني النفع بعد آمالي وخضعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعد أوامرك فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شدي وثاقي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدئي خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك معنى توحيدك وبعد ما انتوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تمعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعا، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعا، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثوم يسير بقاء قصير مدته، فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي. فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها ضج، وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدتي أم لطول البلاء ومدتي، فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع أعضائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك، أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك. فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأذجن إليك بين أهلها ذجيج الآمنين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين. يا غاية آمال العارفين جميعا، يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وضاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يذج إليك ذجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يهرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوتا وترى مكانا أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفا أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فضلك في يدقي منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك ذنوبك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبح لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين يقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعظيم جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت عن عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة مرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت، وأن توفر ختمي من كل خير تنزل أو إحسان تفضل أو بر تنشر أو رزق تبسط أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وحبلي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أصرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وادنو منك ذنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نسيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني أثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك وبعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني منايا، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء. يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء. فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى. ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وصلاحه البكاء. يا صامغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم. صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما تهلو. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. الفاتحة.
امام زمانہ بلند تر صلوات
دشمن اهل بیت پہ لعنت
بشمار.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
زینب نے کہا یہ رو رو کر دو حوصلہ بابا زینب کو. زینب نے کہا یہ رو رو کر دو حوصلہ بابا زینب کو. تنہا ہے لعینوں میں دختر تنہا ہے لعینوں میں دختر دو حوصلہ بابا زینب کو. زینب نے کہا یہ رو رو کر دو حوصلہ بابا زینب کو. بابا میں بری بیٹی ہوں تیری سب بدلا لیں گے مجھ سے تیرا. بابا میں بری بیٹی ہوں تیری سب بدلا لیں گے مجھ سے تیرا. لوگوں کے بدلتے ہیں تیور لوگوں کے بدلتے ہیں تیور دو حوصلہ بابا زینب کو. زینب نے کہا یہ رو رو کر कर दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। ये ज़ैनब है कुलसूम है ये, आपस में सितम गर कहते हैं। ये ज़ैनब है कुलसूम है ये, आपस में सितम गर कहते हैं। हंसते हैं तमाशाई हम पर, हंसते हैं तमाशाई हम पर। दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। ज़ैनब ने कहा ये रो रो कर दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। हिम्मत यू बढ़ाओ बेटी की, आबिद को बचा करके जाए। हिम्मत यू बढ़ाओ बेटी की, आबिद को बचा करके जाए। हर घर से बरसते हैं पत्थर, हर घर से बरसते हैं पत्थर। दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। ज़ैनब ने कहा ये रो रो कर दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। एहसास रिदा का होगा मुझे, तुम हाथ मेरे सर पर रख दो। एहसास रिदा का होगा मुझे, तुम हाथ मेरे सर पर रख दो। मुश्किल है अगर देना चादर, मुश्किल है अगर देना चादर। दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। ज़ैनब ने कहा ये रो रो कर दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। लोगों की निगाहें उठती है, तस्हीर की ज़रबें जलती है। लोगों की निगाहें उठती है, तशहीर की ज़रबें जलती है। बेटी है तेरी ज़ेरे खंजर, बेटी है तेरी ज़ेरे खंजर। दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। ज़ैनब ने कहा ये रो रो कर दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। तन्हा लाइनों में दुख्तर दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। ज़ैनब ने कहा ये रो रो कर दो हौसला बाबा ज़ैनब को। محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
Everybody to keep maintaining social distance as much as possible and keep your masks on as much as possible. Finally, I request you all to recite Surah Fatiha for all of our women, especially for those who do not have anybody to pray for Fatiha. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بالزهراء صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وعلى منكري فضائلهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا غريب الغرباء، يا مظلوم كربلاء، السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته، السلام على من الإجابة تحت قبته، السلام على ساكن كربلاء، فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي يا سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما أما بعد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. To gain the attention and the pleasure of Mawlati Sayyidati Nisa'il Alameen Fatimat al-Zahra alayha salam, a second of your loudest salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل أحبائي, historians narrate that the kafila known as, or famously known now as Mawkib al-Ahzan, the kafila or the caravan of the pure women of Rasulullah who were taken as prisoners and as slaves from Karbala, they left the land of Karbala on the 11th of Muharram, and particularly at the time of Zawwal, towards the city of Kufa. And as we mentioned in the previous majalis, they reached the sur, or the outskirts of the city of Kufa, within the area of Masjid Hannana, where you find the maqam of the blessed head of Sayyid al-Shahadah alayhi salam. They entered into the city of Kufa on the 12th morning of Shahr Muharram, where they were paraded through the market of Kufa. And from there on, there was a number of khitab that were given by Sayyida Fatima al-Sughra, by Sayyida Kulthum, by Sayyida Zainab al-Kubra, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, until they entered into Darul Imara. And there was this confrontation, if you could say, from the side of Ibn Ziyad, la'natullahi alayh. And from here you find that historians differ on the amount of time spent by Ahlul Bayt, the prisoners from the household of Ahlul Bayt in the city of Kufa. And there is much shuruh, there is much commentary, and there is a number of justifications that can be made to warrant the path taken by each and every historian. However, if we were to take by the general qawaid, the general rule of thumbs, or the principles of analyzing history, and Samahti Sheikh, we're blessed with his presence today, and by far he is much more knowledgeable on this and shall be able to vet on this. But when you are taking the path of history and historical evidence, analyzing history and narrating history, the path which is generally taken is the path of the mashhur. You find that what is mashhur and acceptable amongst the mu'arrikhin, or amongst the historians, is that Ahlul Bayt spent between 2 to 3 days in the city of Kufa. And there are many events that happened within the city of Kufa that actually go on to prove it was in the benefit of Ibn Ziyad al-La'in to have Ahlul Bayt sent out of Kufa in the fastest time possible. And these same factors come into play when Ahlul Bayt were eventually taken to Sham, and for the events that happened inside the Darbar of Yazid al-La'in, you find that the same factors that pushed Ibn Ziyad to have the mawkib of Ahlul Bayt move out of the city of Kufa, the same factors came into play for Yazid al-La'in to send this mawkib of Ahlul Bayt back outside of Sham. And this in itself shall be explained in a separate majlis. What is mashhur between the mu'arrakhin is that Ahlul Bayt, the Sabayah, the prisoners, spent up to the 13th, the 14th Afwan, or the 15th of Muharram inside the city of Kufa. And from the city of Kufa, the command then came for Ahlul Bayt to be sent from there on to Sham. Mu'arrakhin, again, historians, are of the opinion that the cities that Ahlul Bayt were taken through from Kufa to Sham was not the direct route which could have been a faster route. Rather, the command by Yazid al-La'in in coordination with Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad was that the prisoners, the women from Ahlul Bayt, together with the surviving men, and from the surviving men we have Imam Sajjad, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh, اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجه. Imam al-Bakir, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh, اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Ahibai, do not be tired of reciting salawat, because narration says to recite salawat loudly cleanses the heart from nifaq. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. فإمام السجاد, Imam al-Bakir, روحي لهم الفداء, 2. And then you have Zayd, and you have Amr and Hassan al-Muthanna, who are the 3 surviving sons from Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. Hassan al-Muthanna, as we explained, who participated in the Battle of Karbala, fought valiantly, had one of his arms severed, such that he fainted on the battlefield. The enemies thought that he was dead, and it was only when they came to behead him so that they could put his head on a spear, they found that he was alive, and by the intercession of tribesmen from his mother's side, he was taken as a prisoner with the hope that he would soon die. And the life of Hassan al-Muthanna and the children of Hassan al-Muthanna and the daughter of Imam al Husayn, who he was married to, and the ensuing generation that came from that, there is kalam kabir in respect to the Sada from the lineage of Imam al-Mujtaba. Anyway, having said this, the Mawqib and the Sabaya were not taken on a direct route between the city of Kufa to the city of Sham. The idea was to parade them through every major city within the immediate Islamic empire between Hijaz, Sham, and Iraq, to reconcile or to establish the power of Yazid. And the idea over here was that parade the women and parade the heads of the Shahadah on spears in the most gruesome manner to ensure that lessons are established and fear is instilled within the hearts of the citizens, within the hearts of those residents of the Islamic empire, that anyone who goes against the rule of this Khilafah of Bani Umayyah, anyone who goes against the rule of Yazid, then this is what the outcome is going to be. Ka'in man kan, whoever you are, even if you are the grandson of the Holy Prophet, for you to stand up against this hukum that has been made, this is what the end result is going to be. And you find that this is a seerah which is well known within the seerah of the dictatorials and the dictatorial regimes, even non-Islamic, that have governed across time, where the trump card in the hand of the dictators to rule via fear, to instill fear. You see, even within some of the Islamic countries, so-called Islamic countries, you find a group of demonstrators who would come out, and they have legitimate rights to demonstrate their access to power, access to water, access to education, not to be second-class citizens. When these demonstrators are captured and they are punished, look through these Islamic countries one by one, you will see that they are taken to public squares and they are disciplined in order to make an example out of them. Anybody else who dare try, this is what the natija and the iqab is going to be. For understanding the psychology of the enemy, the psychology of the dictator in how they establish the seat of the power. Same thing, Saddam, al-La'in. They used to come out, and people who spoke poetry in the name of Imam al Husayn during the days of Arba'in, they would take them to the public square and they would pull out their tongues in public. Hatta such that one of these videos became public during the trial of this La'in. In any case, these are lessons in history and patterns of history that repeat themselves, ahibba'i. For you find that this was the goal. And historians now come forward and they establish the route of the Sabaya, or this Mawkib Ahlul Bayt, where from the city of Kufa, they were made to travel from Kufa to the city of Tikrit. The city of Tikrit at that time was known to be from the lovers and the sympathizers of Ahlul Bayt. From Kufa, they went to Tikrit. From Tikrit, they went into Mosul. From Mosul, they went into the city of Sinjar. From Sinjar to Ainul Warad in Iraq. From Ainul Warad, they came down to the city of Halab. And it is in the city of Halab that you find one of the wives of Sayeda Shahadah, who was expecting, miscarried due to the intensity of the walking and the horrendous conditions they were subject to within the deserts. For they made her climb up the mountain, down the valleys, and she miscarried. Until today, you have Masjid al Muhsin, and the name of this infant, according to Mu'arrakhin, was rightfully named as Muhsin in the remembrance of the brother of Sayyid al-Shuhada, who was Shaheed, first Shaheed of the Wilayah of Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. Right next to it, you have Masjidul, this is known as Masjid al-Saqta. And right next to it, you have Masjid al-Nuqta. Masjid al-Nuqta, the night in which the Mawkib of Ahlul Bayt spent in the city of Halab, the blessed head of Sayyid al-Shuhada was placed on a stone, and a drop of that blood fell onto that stone. And as we mentioned in previous majalis, that the Masjid of Halab was a gathering point for hundreds of years, because on the day of Ashura, the stone on which the blessed head of Imam al Husayn was put and that blood stain remained, that blood would come back to life. It would come into liquid form and would boil, like as if it is bubbling or boiling on that stone for hundreds of years. And we have witness accounts that have been recorded and narrated within libraries, similar to what is seen in the Haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada in the Mathaf on the day of Ashura, when the pure turba from the grave of Imam al Husayn turns into blood. In any case, Mawkib moves from Halab to the city of Huma, and from Huma to Hams, and from Hams they went into the city of Baalbak, which is in current day Lebanon. And tonight is the talk for the city of Baalbak, and who was martyred in the city of Baalbak. For as Baalbak, by the way, Bain al-Qawsayn was the last station before the city of Damascus. And there are a number of villages that the Ahlul Bayt passed through within what we have outlined. When the Mawkib reached Baalbak, historians and muhakkikeen, and one of them contemporary al-muhakkik, al-Jalil, Allama Muhammad Sadiq al-Karbasi, he mentions within his Mawsu'at of Karbala, Mawsu'at Karbala, that the Mawkib of Ahlul Bayt reached the city of Baalbak on the 28th of Muharram. These are the days in which we're living, the end of Shahr Muharram. 28th of Muharram, the Mawkib Ahlul Bayt reached the city of Baalbak. Baalbak at that time was known to be a city of Nawasib who sided with Bani Umayyah, which is why when Shimr al-La'in sent a messenger to the governor of Baalbak stating that they are coming in with the prisoners of Ahlul Bayt and the head of Imam al Husayn alayhi salam, the governor commanded for the entire city to be decorated and for women to come out on the streets. And the riwayat, the historical riwayat, mention in particular that women were brought out on the side of the streets to beat drums while they welcomed this procession of Ahlul Bayt with the head of Imam al Husayn placed on a spear. They enter into the city of Baalbak, and they are jeered, and they are abused, and they are insulted, and they are mocked. See, shamata, to be mocked on your integrity, is one of the most difficult things to endure. To be insulted on your honor perhaps will hurt you 1,000 times more than the strike of a sword. Which is why Sayyida Kulthum, when she entered into the city of Baalbak, she raised her hands in dua against the people who jeered and mocked them. having stayed in this land of, or entering into the city of Baalbak on the 28th of Shahr Muharram, according to Allama al-Karbasi, and we have other historians who are of the opinion that they entered into on the 29th of Muharram. 29th of Muharram, why? On the basis that they entered, Mawqib Ahlul Bayt entered into Sham on the 1st of Shahr Safar. For the distance between Baalbak to Dimashq would not take more than a day and a half, on the assumption that Shahr Muharram in that year was 30 days, then it makes sense for the 29th of Muharram for them to be in Baalbak, and then on the 1st of Safar to reach the city of Sham. In any case, between the 28th and the 29th of Shahr Muharram is the closest time span that we have between both of these muhaqqiqin. They spent the night in the city of Baalbak. As they spent the night as prisoners, the following morning, they leave the city of Baalbak for the final destination, which is Sham. And as they left early in the morning, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam sees from this mawqib that is getting ready to leave for Sham, everyone is woken up. Everyone is roped and chained, except for this one girl by the name of Sayeda Khawla, Khawla bint al Husayn. This girl did not wake up that night. Historians mention that her age could not be greater than 4 or 5, for she was within the same age bracket as Sayyida Ruqayyah, this daughter of Imam al Husayn, from the hunger and the thirst. You know, within the Maqatil, Arbab al-Maqatil mentioned that many times along the way, when the guards who were selected to escort the Mawqib Sabaya from Kufa to Sham, they would sit down at night, and before they consumed their alcohol, they would sit down to eat. And they would eat the best of food while the children were on the other side out of hunger and thirst. Into Ba'd, I don't want to say anything more. Into Ahiba'i Mu'mineen. And you are all fathers, you are all parents to children. Have you seen in Shahr Ramadan, when your young child is fasting, many times the mother will say, don't bring the child next to the kitchen when we are cooking. Because when they smell the food, it will be hard for them to complete the fast. How if you can quantify this grief, the children of Imam al Husayn. Fahai Sayeda Khawla, from the hunger, from the thirst, from the beatings that they incurred. How I will elaborate under Qawa'id Amma, which the historians say for what happened on the women of Ahlul Bayt is applicable on Sayeda Khawla because she was part of this mawqib. How much can this girl bear? So she became Shahida in the city of Baalbak. And the historians mention Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam dug a grave for her, buried her, and planted a tree as an alama, as a sign for her grave. They left the city of Baalbak towards Dimashq. Historically, Ahibba'i, there was no sign of this grave, and there was no mention of Sayeda Khawla, a daughter of Imam al Husayn, who died in the city of Baalbak on the way to Sham. Until the year which is close to 900 after Hijrah. And this is where now the historical analysis comes in. And this is how, or these are the types of qara'in, indicators that are used by historians to establish the authenticity and the existence of Sayeda Khawla. Up till this point, if you were to put a full stop, we come to the chapter or the title of objections and the reply to objections. First person or first objection that comes forward is that when you come forward and you narrate for us this incident of Sayeda Khawla, the daughter of Imam al Husayn, number one, why is it that no historians have mentioned Sayeda Khawla before? And why is it this grave was not known until 900 AH? How this grave was discovered in itself is fascinating. So from 61 AH until 900 AH, we have no mention, recorded mention, I should say, to be clear. We have no recorded written mention that has reached us in regards to the grave and the martyrdom of Sayeda Khawla in the city of Baalbak between 61 AH to 900 AH. What happened in 900 AH? The area in which Sayeda Khawla was buried, over time, the fertility of the land was an orchard, greenery suitable for farming with lots of trees that bore fruits. An orchard for the owner of that land, who was the chief of the tribe of Jari, a tribe, Jari, which was well known amongst the citizens and amongst the residents of the city of Baalbak, who have been residents of the city of Baalbak for hundreds of years with a reputation of integrity. For one of the chiefs of the tribe of Jari saw in his dream 3 consecutive nights. A young girl appears in his dream. And you know, when it comes to dreams, we have 2 types of dreams. Ru'ya Sadiqa and you have Ru'ya Kadhiba. And within a Ru'ya Sadiqa, there is tarattub of ahkam that can be implemented in regards to this. Even though what is mashhur amongst the fuqaha, mashhur amongst the contemporary fuqaha, that even a ru'ya sadiqa cannot be a hujjah when it comes to a hukum shar'i. But this is in the issues of halal and haram. And this is what is mashhur contemporary. What was in the past was different, but we're not in a place of nikash, of these differences of opinions and the pros of who was for this and who was not, and the proofs. It's a separate bahar. However, it is important for us to outline that when we talk about the hujjiyah of a dream, we are not in the point, or we are not at the place bayan of separating a hukum shar'i of halal from haram. Rather, we are at the place of establishing a historical reality. And the rules of diraya and ulmul hadith or usulul hadith are very clear on the distinction between the two. In any case, the Sayyid or the chief from the tribe of Jari for 3 consecutive nights sees in his dream this young daughter, young girl with haibah come in her dream. And she says to him, "Oh Sheikh, I am Khawla, the daughter of al Husayn, who is buried in your orchard. And the water from the nearby rivers is seeping into my grave. For I ask you to stop the water from coming into my grave." 3 nights, this man neglected the dream. On the 4th night, when he saw this dream, he woke up astounded. And coinciding to this period where he saw these dreams 3 nights in a row, there was a beam of light from the heavens stretching down to the earth, overlooking into the grave, or onto the grave maqam, grave spot of Sayeda Khawla. All this is mentioned for us in Mawsu'at Karbala by Alam al-Karbasi. The chief from the tribe of Jari then went to the chief of the tribe of Murtada, Sadat, the Sadat of Murtada, who eventually then became the custodians of the haram of Sayeda Khawla in Baalbak, and then put in their wasiyah, the land that they owned, that it would become a waqf, dedicated and gifted to Sayeda Khawla, and they would then be buried. All the khuddams, the family in itself became khadims of the haram of Sayeda Khawla, and they then decided that they would be buried within the sahan, which is why may Allah Azza wa Jal give all of us the tawfiq to perform the ziyarah of Sayeda Khawla, the daughter of Imam al Husayn. But when if you were to go there, you would see that in the sahan there is a maqbarah, a graveyard for the Sadat of Murtada, generation after generation, who are buried there. And this goes back to that history. The chief of the tribe of Ali Jari goes to the chief of the tribe of Ali Murtada. And these are tribes that are very well known. Their genealogy, and their history in the city of Baalbak. And these are important points when it comes to measuring the authenticity of the grave. The tribe or the chief of the tribe of Ali Murtada, Sayyid by the name of Sayyid Ali ibn al Husayn ibn Musa, and it goes on. Alawiyin. He goes and he narrates the dream to him. This is what I have seen. For the Sayyid, together with a number of ulama and a number of Sadat from the tribe of Ali Murtada, walked to the place that was pointed to the chief from Ali Jari. They unearthed the grave, and lo and behold, 6 to 8 feet under, they discovered the body of a young girl as if she's asleep with huzn, grief still apparent on her face. And this became one of the biggest recorded events in the history of Baalbak around 900 AH, where as soon as this news spread in the city, people from far and wide came in. The family of Sayeda Ali Murtada then moved this pure body of the daughter of Imam al Husayn, and they buried her in the markad that you have now, that you see today, which they owned the land and they gave in waqf. And from that time onwards, from 900 AH onwards, you have a silsila and the history of 600 years, 600 odd years of service from this family of Sayeda Ali Murtada towards the Haram of Sayeda Khawla, and their graves are witness towards this. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tayyib. If we understand this, we have a number of objections that are put forward and rebuttals towards these objections. The first objection is that a person comes forward and he says, Shaykhuna, after everything that has been said and everything that is portrayed to us, why is it that none of the historians have ever mentioned Khawla bint al Husayn by name in any of the books? For if you were to refer to Kitab al-Irshad of Sheikh al-Mufid, and you were to refer to other books of the ulama who have specialized within the Tariq of Ahlul Bayt, and even from the books of the Amma, even though we don't take the Amma to be a hujjah in the majority of the things, in any case, even the books of the Amma in itself have no mention of Khawla bint al Husayn. How is it our historians would have neglected the name of Sayeda Khawla and her name is not mentioned? They then use this as a premise to negate the authenticity of the haram of Sayeda Khawla, the existence of Sayeda Khawla, and many of these objections that are placed on Sayeda Khawla in its entirety is mirrored onto Sayeda Ruqayya. Because even till now, we have a number of people, and many times it is unfortunate, but what is supposed to be the member of Ali Muhammad is used to propagate thoughts against Ali Muhammad, where the existence of Sayeda Ruqayya in itself is questioned. The same ishkalat to a great extent are mirrored onto Sayeda Khawla. In any case, how do you reply back to this answer? Why isn't her name mentioned in the books and the works of the likes of Sheikh Mufid and so on and so forth? Number one, Ahibai, not everything within the books of history have reached us. You have, and all of you are familiar, the burning of the library of Sheikh Tusi, and you find that a number of literature, the amount of literature that was burnt in the library of Sheikh Tusi, the historians mentioned that the river Dajla, not only were books burnt, but books were thrown into the rivers. Number of books that were thrown into the river Dajla. They say parts of the river Dajla went black for a number of days. Why black? Ink, black ink on paper. The amount of books that were thrown into the river, the color of the river changed. Ahibai. When you look at the books of Rijal that we have today, Ashhar al-Kutub al-Rijal, the likes of Kishi and the Najashi and so on and so forth, you will find, you can count them with your hand. You'll be lucky if you get traces of more than 7 to 8 books. However, when you go back to the manuscripts, you find that inside of the library of Sheikh Tusi, there were over 100 books just in the Rijal. Over 100 books with Sheikh Tusi. And what we have access to today is perhaps less than 10. For there is a big part of our literature and a big part of our history that was destroyed. This is the first answer. Number two, Ahibai, it was not within the Daydana. It was not within the status of Ahlul Bayt to publicize the names and the statures and the affairs of the women of their house. Which is why you will find that even when it comes on to Imam al-Kadhim onwards, Imam al-Kadhim had a number of children. You find between the historians, you will have children that are numbered between 20 to 35. And from these, the daughters of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, apart from a handful of the daughters, you will find a number of the daughters are not mentioned. Until and unless there was some public circumstance that forced them to be exposed or to be known. It was not within the daydana of Ahlul Bayt to publicize the affairs of the women of the house, which is why, Shahid, for the claim, there has to be a proof. One of the proofs for this is that Ibn Abbas himself mentions that we did not know there was a daughter in the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib known as Zainab until the days of Kufa. And even when it came to the city, when Amir was in the city of Kufa, he says, I heard that there was a daughter in the house of Ali known as Zainab. Ibn Abbas didn't say that I saw the daughter. He said, I heard that there was a daughter. This has to do with this entire concept of ghira, concept which has faded away over time. Shibhul adim, like it is non-existent. And when it is talked about, it's so strayed away from this concept of ghira that when you bring it forward, sometimes mu'mineen are astonished by this. Straight away, there's a concept of extremism that is attributed to it. This in itself is a bahath of its own. Into mu'mineen, you are able to understand. The second argument that is put forward is that it was not within the daydana, it was not within the stature of Ahlul Bayt to publicize the events of their women. Number two. Number three, we have a rule of thumb that is used by the historians that witness testimony has greater weight in authenticity than a written testimony by the unseen eye. The witness testimony overpowers that which is written and could be missed inside of the books. When you look at the event of Sayeda Khawla, number one, you have a family, the family of Ali Murtada, Sadat of ulama, who were known for their integrity over hundreds of years. When they come forward and there is a witness of a body that has not decayed or decomposed, there is no reason within the character of any of these two tribes to doubt their truthfulness, their siddiq, or you are attributing the title of thiqah to them if you're in the field of rijal, for example, or diraya, where there is no absolute reason to doubt their credibility and the truthfulness of the claim and the claim of hundreds of people, I should say tens to hundreds, however many was there, who witnessed the body of Sayeda Khawla in itself with the alamat, undecayed, undecomposed, buried inside. The event became so mashhoor that in the immediate history after this, you find that the tree which was planted by Imam Sajjad alayhi salam became a source of shifa'ah for people with sickness. Tayyib, the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal has placed a cure within this tree And millions of people with uncurable sicknesses who then came and ate from the leaves of the tree. You could attribute 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 30, 50 to be coincidence and not causality. If you were to follow the rules of mantiq between and differentiate between causality and coincidence, when you look at the number of cases, recorded cases of people who have gained shifa, you find that this is not coincidence, there is causality. And why no other tree in Baalbak has that same impact as this tree? Such that when you go into the Haram of Sayeda Khawla, you find now there is a zujaj and there is a glass casing that has been put around to protect the tree in itself. The manner in which people used to go and seek barakah and shifa and so on and so forth, they feared that the tree in itself may get ruined and destructed. The fact that miracle happened over there. Number 3, with this Ali Murtada, to continue from here, the event was so well known. And the event, this grand discovery by way of a miracle, that Allah Azza wa Jal, out of His own wisdom, divine wisdom and this divine hikmah, brings to reality and sheds light on this piece of Karbala over thousands of years later, for us in this generation to be able to bear witness to it. It was an event that was so widely acknowledged that you have this famous English historian slash explorer slash archaeologist who traveled to Baalbak in the year 1100 after Hijrah, 1100, so 300-400 years back. He traveled into the city of Baalbak to witness the remains of the citadels that were built during the time of the Roman Empire. And he captured what he saw in a painting. And within the painting of these Roman ruins that are there, you have the Qubba of Sayeda Khawla. More than that, Ahibba, you have in the year 1200 AH. So you're looking at about 250 odd years back, give take. The Uthmani governor of the city of Baalbak, because 200 years ago, these guys were under Uthmani rule. The Uthmani governor, the governor of Baalbak, who was Uthmani by the name of Ishaq Ruhi, together with the Sunni Mufti of Baalbak by the name of Khalil al-Amari or Khalil al-Umari. Ishaq al-Ruhi, the governor, Uthmani governor of Baalbak, legislated the collection of funds and the construction of the Haram of Sayeda Khawla. And at the same time, the Sunni Mufti, in acknowledgement and in reverence of the discovery of the body of the daughter of Imam al Husayn, 100 years back or so, gave a fatwa that ordering the citizens of Baalbak and the surrounding of Baalbak, Shia or Sunni, contribute towards the building supplies of the haram of the daughter or the granddaughter of Rasulullah and participate in the ajr. The Amma, who did not even believe in the wilaya of Amirul Mu'mineen, who were close to the event, had as much yaqeen in the authenticity of the event such that a fatwa of that nature was given. It shows you that closer to this discovery, there was no tashkik. There was no doubt in the authenticity of this miracle that has happened at that time. And you find that throughout history from that time, there are periods where there has been construction and reconstruction on the grave, over the grave, the Qubbah of Sayeda Khawla bint al Husayn, this daughter from the daughters of Sayyid al-Shahadah, who you would say today, or you would term today as those unsung heroes. And this has happened many times in history. Look at contemporary history, where there have been warriors and champions of certain events, but the reality of them only comes out years and years later. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This is in regards to, or these are possible answers, some of many that can be given in regards to objections that are placed, but Sayeda Khawla's name was not mentioned in books. This is one. Number two, person comes forward and an objection may be put forward. Why is it? Okay, even if her name was hidden, why did it take over 900 years, 1,000 years for this grave to be discovered? Number one, the fact that Baalbak was Nasibi, there was always the plausible fear that the bodies of Ahlul Bayt would be removed from the graves and would be desecrated. This is one of the hardest things for Imam Zainul Abidin. When he buried Sayeda Khawla and when he buried Sayeda Ruqayyah, to leave these two girls in the land of the enemy in an unmarked grave and go. It's very difficult, Ahibai. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us from every type of su and bala. But if you know of a family that has had to bury somebody while they were away from their home, on their travel, in a strange land, ask them the grief of leaving that land. The land, Baalbak, was Nasibi. There was always the fear that this body could be unearthed and the sanctity of the body would be violated. And hence it is not the first grave to be hidden in history. The grave of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was not publicized until much later in history. You find that, why was the grave hidden? Why was Amir al-Mu'mineen, the city of Kufa and Najaf, buried outside in the dark at the time of Fajr in the presence of no one? Because there was the threat that the grave of Amir al-Mu'mineen will be unearthed and his body will be violated in terms of its sanctity. And this is not a hypothetical threat, it is a threat and a case that actually happened in history. Zayd al-Shaheed, the son of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam himself, when he stood up in revolution and he was martyred and he was beheaded, a few of his companions took his body and they buried him. What did the dictatorial powers do? They came out, unearthed the body of Zayd al-Shaheed, a body that has been buried. They unearthed it and they hung it and they crucified it for a number of years, they say. Number of years was in my mind, and the taraddud is from my side, from 4 to about 7 years. Publicly crucified the beheaded body. If you have the power of imagination, a beheaded body crucified on a public square for a number of years, the body of Zayd al-Shaheed never decayed. So it became a reason of attention and for people to think and inquire about his cause, because there was a level of divinity associated to him. For what did they do? They took this dead body without a head of Zayd al-Shaheed. They burnt it and they scattered the ashes, because it symbolized haqq. For there was always this threat of leaving this daughter of Imam al Husayn in the lands of the enemies. And it was in the maslihah of Ahlul Bayt that it should remain uncovered, unnamed, until the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the ni'mah of Allah azza wa jalla upon this ummah, that the dhikr of Imam al Husayn is ensured. Number two, even if her mention was there, it has always been in the maslihah of Bani Umayyah to conceal the level of oppression performed by them on Ahlul Bayt. When you have scattered graves of 5 and 6 year old children in a Mawqib Ahzan, it is the biggest indicator and the biggest testimony to the extent of dhulm that Bani Umayyah went through. And to ensure that there is no uprising, they did everything that they could to conceal, lest it becomes a congregating point and a point of inspiration to stand up for justice. And there are a number of reasons that can be given on this, with supporting evidence. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. 29th of Shahr Muharram, istishhad of Sayeda Khawla, bint Imam al Husayn. The historians mention that all the oppression and the dhulm that happened on the Mawkib Sabaya. With Sayeda Khawla being a part of this Mawkib, she was exposed to the same type of dhulm. A girl not older than 5 years of age. How much could she walk in the deserts from Kufa to Tikrit and Mosul, Sinjar, Halab, Hans, Hama until Baalbak? This 5-year-old girl whose feet were swollen from the extent of the walking. Ahibai, you don't need a riwayah and you don't need a hadith to tell you that the feet of Sayeda Khawla were swollen. Why? Because history works with qara'in, with qarinas. If the feet of the elders were swollen, then what about the feet of the youngsters? They are awla. Sayeda Khawla's feet were swollen. Sayeda Khawla covered in dust, grains of sand blowing into her eyes. Hungry and thirsty, they enter in the city of Baalbak. The head of her father, Abba Abdullah, were placed on a spear, and the crowds are laughing on her, beating drums. They say the women of Ahlul Bayt, the children of Ahlul Bayt at that point were absolutely taken aback by fear and terror. We don't know whether they were terrified and heartbroken to see the head of their father on a spear, Allah, Allah, or the jolting and the laughing of the enemies on them. Few months back, when there was a death in a family, there was a family where the head of the family, the father had passed away. He left behind young children. So when they were burying them and they had the final wida after the Salatul Mayyit, the uncle came to the other brothers and he said, these young daughters, don't let them see the grave of don't let them see the janaza of their father. They said, why? It's the last time they're going to say, Fi amanillah. This is the last time they're going to say wida to their father. The uncle says, no, these girls, if they see the cotton wool in the nose of the janaza, and if they see their father in a kafan and they smell the hunut, these girls are going to be scarred. They are not going to sleep tonight. They are going to cry and they are going to cry. This is the human heart. When a mayyit is there inside of a kafan, we want to shield the youngsters. Then what about the daughters of Abu Abdullah? They see the severed head of their father on the spear. Allah, Allah, severed from the jugular vein, and the wind blows the beard of Abu Abdullah from the right and the left. The girls, every time they show the head of Abu Abdullah, it is as if they died. Sayeda Sukaina says, on our way to Sham, every time the head of our father was lifted on the spear, Sukaina alayhi salam says, we looked at the head of our father, Abu Abdullah, we began to weep. Every time we wept, Sukaina says, Shimar al-La'in came with a spear and he hit us on the head. Allah, Allah. If you look, I was looking, the spear which is made of iron, that is made of steel, many of the times his weight is almost 15 to 20 kgs. In the best type and the heaviest type of a spear, you can imagine the women of Ahlul Bayt being hit with 20 kg of Sayeda Sukaina says we were hit with spears on our head, and when they didn't hit us with spears, they whipped us until we stopped crying. Sayeda Khawla, one of the girls who was whipped in the Mawkib Ahzan, 29th of Muharram, she doesn't wake up. The narrations mention Imam Zainul Abidin buried her. The poet says, I stood at the grave of Imam Zainul Abidin and I said to him, Yabna Rasulillah, with what heart and with what hands did you bury your family members? One in Baalbak and another one in the Kharab, in the dungeon of Sham. Ya Zayn al-Abidin, Ya Zayn al-Abidin, how did you bury Abdullah al-Radhi? Allah. The narrations mention on the 13th of Muharram when Imam Zainul Abidin was burying Ali al-Asghar, the people from Bani Asad say, we saw him lift an infant, but the back of Imam Zainul Abidin was bent when he was lifting the infant. We know Ya Sajjad, Ali al-Asghar was not that heavy such that your bent was back. What was the issue? What was the problem? Ya Zayd al-Abidin. Imam Sajjad comes back and says, it is not the weight of the baby, it is the weight of the arrow that severed the jugular vein of Ali al-Asghar, which is when Imam Zainul Abidin placed the body of Ali al-Asghar on the chest of Aba Abdullah. He did it so slowly and he did it so tenderly. Ya Aba Abdullah, Allah, Allah. He goes on and he asks, Ya Zayn al-Abidin, what was more difficult, the burying of Ali al-Asghar or the burying of your father, Abu Abdullah? Why? This poet has read the history, because Bani Asad say when Imam Zainul Abidin was going to bury Abu Abdullah, he didn't lift the body of Imam al Husayn. Rather, Imam Sajjad sat. He sat by the body of Imam al Husayn. He kissed the manhar. Allah, the manhar is the part where the neck was separated from the rest of the body. He kissed the manhar of Abu Abdullah, and then he slid the body of Imam al Husayn into one big abba, and then he lowered the abba into the grave. The people of Bani Asad asked, Ya Zayn al-Abidin, why the abba for the body of Imam al Husayn? Sajjad replies back, what was remaining from the body of my father to be lifted in one piece when 10 of the enemies came and they trampled on the chest and the back of my father with their horses. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Matam Hussein, Matam Khawla.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, 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 Hussein. करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, 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 तुरबते बाली सकीना से जुदाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, तुरबते बाली सकीना से जुदाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, इस कदर मारे तमाचे हर्षमर बदकार ने, इस कदर मारे तमाचे हर्षमर बदकार ने, हश्र तक वो मौत बाबा की रुलाई हो गई, तुरबते वाली सकीना से जुदाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, इस कदर मारे तमाचे हर्षमर बदकार ने, इस कदर मारे तमाचे हर्षमर बदकार ने, हश्र तक वो मौत बाबा की रुलाई हो गई, तुरबते वाली सकीना से जुदाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, मोमिनों मुंह को छुपा लो, नोच डालो सर के बाल, मोमिनों मुंह को छुपा लो, नोच डालो सर के बाल, सरबरे नादश्त में तारा की जाई हो गई, तुरबते वाली सकीना से जुदाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, तुरबते बाली सकीना से जुदाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, असगरे मासूम का वो मुस्कुराना मौत पर, असगरे मासूम का वो मुस्कुराना मौत पर, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई। मोमिनों मुंह को छुपा लो, नोच डालो सर के बाल, मोमिनों मुंह को छुपा लो, नोच डालो सर के बाल, सरगरे ना दश्त में ताला की जाई हो गई, तुरबते बाली सकीना से जुदाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से जुदाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई। सर कटा गुलजार जाए मुश्किल खुशा के लाल का, सर कटा गुलजार जाए मुश्किल खुशा के लाल का, ता कयामत दीन की मुश्किल खुशाई हो गई, तुरबते वाली सकीना से जुदाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, करबला वालों की जिंदा से रिहाई हो गई, तुरबते वाली सकीना से जुदाई हो गई। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन, दिल के अज़ादारो या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन, हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन, हुसैन या हुसैन, हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। अब तो आ जाओ शहंशाह वफा, 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 अब तो आ जाओ शहंशाह वफा। रो रो कहती थी सकीना रन में, रो रो कहती थी सकीना रन में, रुक गई सानिए ज़हरा की रिदा, अब तो आ जाओ शहंशाह वफा, शहंशाह वफा, अब तो आ जाओ 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 शहंशाह वफा। शिमरने मारे तमाचे है मेरे गालों पे, शिमरने मारे तमाचे है मेरे गालों पे, जिनकी यादें के उठाया है मुझे, जिनकी यादें के की लाश पे रोने ना दिया अब तो आजा ओ शहंशाह वफा 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 रो रो कहती थी सकीना रन में रो रो कहती थी सकीना रन में लुट गई सारी ये ज़रा की रिदा अब तो आजा ओ शहंशाह वफा अब तो आजा ओ शहंशाह वफा अब तो आजा ओ शहंशाह वफा छीन कर सब की रिदाएं और जलाए ख़ैमे छीन कर सब की रिदाएं और जलाए ख़ैमे ऐसे लूटा है मुसलमानों ने ऐसे लूटा है मुसलमानों ने ना किया आले मोहम्मद का हया अब तो आजा ओ शहंशाह वफा 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 रो रो कहती थी सकीना रन में रो रो कहती थी सकीना रन में लुट गई सानी ये ज़रा की रिदा अब तो आजा ओ शहंशाह वफा 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 तोर दीवार के अकबर के जिगर में बरसी तोर दीवार के अकबर के जिगर में बरसी और सितमगर ने कहा मौला से और सितमगर ने कहा मौला से ये सुना है कि तू साबिर है बड़ा अब तो आजा ओ शहंशाह वफा 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 शिमरने मारे तमाचे है मेरे गालों पे शिमरने मारे तमाचे है मेरे गालों पे दिल की यादें के उठाया है मुझे दिल की यादें के उठाया है मुझे बाबा की लाश पे रोने ना दिया अब तो आजा ओ शहंशाह वफा 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 या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन Ya Hussein. Haydar Mola calls out Hussein. Fatima John calls out Hussein. Bibi Zainab calls out Hussein. Hussein میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل حیدریان میگر حسین فاطمیان میگر حسین زینبیان میگر حسین حسین میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل البنین love her Hussein not for Abashi cry for Hussein not for her lions only Hussein Hussein میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل مروه صفا میگه حسین دور مینا میگه حسین کربلا میگه حسین حسین میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل The mountain tops call out Hussein, the desert plains call out Hussein, Karbala calls out Hussein, Hussein میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل ارض و سما میگه حسین فرشته ها میگه حسین عرش خدا میگه حسین حسین میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل The earth and sky wept for Hussein, the angels all wept for Hussein. The Arsh of Allah cries for Hussein, Hussein میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل قدر و فلک میگه حسین نور و علق میگه حسین نمازیه میگه حسین حسین میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل The holy books call out Hussein, the holy lands call out Hussein, even Salat calls out Hussein, Hussein میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل مسافرن میگه حسین مهاجرن میگه حسین کبوترن میگه حسین حسین میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل The travelers call out Hussein, the prisoners call out Hussein, even the birds call out Hussein, Hussein میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل زهر خین میگه حسین ابو ثمامه میگه حسین علو سجا میگه حسین حسین میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل حبیب هور call for Hussein, Qasim John call for Hussein, Saeed Nabis call for Hussein, Hussein میگه ابوالفضل حسین میگه ابوالفضل حسین آقا میگه عباس حسین جانم میگه عباس حسین مولا میگه عباس بفاضل میگه سکینه بفاضل میگه سکینه گوشه امام حسین calls for Abbas. Oh, blessed master calls for Abbas. The king of kings calls for Abbas. Bufadil calls for Sukaina. Bufadil calls for Sukaina. Hussein Agha میگه Abbas. Hussein Mola میگه Abbas. Hussein جانم میگه Abbas. Bufadil میگه Sukaina. بفاضل ميغيل سكينة. Imam Hussein calls for Abbas, oh blessed master, calls for Abbas, the king of kings, calls for Abbas, بفاضل ميغيل سكينة, بفاضل ميغيل سكينة. يا عباس 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 يا عباس